All right, we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another Mornings with the Museum program. My name is Pat Kane, and in just a few moments, we'll get started sharing some awesome content for our theme this week. Theme this week is Springtime Tales, and we have some lovely guests here to share some awesome tales of springtime with you. So let's figure out who is joining us today. Again, I'm Pat Kane, Public Programs Visitor Services Coordinator here at the Museum of the Grand Prairie, also doing other cultural and historical programs throughout the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. Barb, would you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Barb Olsleger-Garvey. I'm the Director of the Museum and Education Department at the Champaign County Forest Preserve District.
Thank you, Barb. And Sandy, how about you?
Hi, I'm Sandy. I'm one of the educators here at the museum. Mainly I do school field trips, a little bit different this year, but still reaching out to lots and lots of children, and I love what I do.
All right. Well, thanks, Barb. Thanks, Sandy, for joining us today. And we would also love to know who out there is watching this morning. So if you could, write down in the comment section below where you're watching from this morning. Gabrielle is tuning in from Melvin. I have some other folks tuning in, so let us know where you're watching from this morning by writing it in the comment section below. These Mornings with the Museum programs are also designed to be question and answer sessions too. So if you have some questions for us, whether it's questions about what we're talking about this morning, please write those in. If you have questions about other general things, our thoughts on life, whatever else, feel free to write those questions down in the comment section below, and we'll answer those here live for you. Makes it a lot more fun for you and for us. We have some back and forth with some question and answers, so feel free to write those questions down below. Before we jump into today's program, just a few upcoming things happening throughout the Champaign County Forest Preserve District. So the Museum of the Grand Prairie and the Homer Lake Interpretive Center, two educational facilities in the Champaign County Forest Preserve District, are now open again to the public. Museum of the Grand Prairie, we're open Tuesday through Saturday, 1 to 5 p.m. by way of time tickets. And the Homer Lake Interpretive Center is open Tuesday through Friday from 1 to 5 p.m. And we encourage you to visit ccfpd.org to learn more about how you can visit each facility before you head out there. This coming Tuesday, March 16th from 1 p.m. on the Museum of the Grand Prairie front porch, we will do another free craft bag giveaway. This craft bag has some awesome spring break activities inside of it. When we used to do in-person programs at prior museum spring break events, we would have some awesome hands-on activities that we would do with visitors of all ages, but we'll be giving you all the tools you need for some of those activities and a few new ones in these free craft bags. Also, each bag includes a free child-sized mask for anyone who picks them up. We've got a limit of 50 total bags and are limiting 2 bags given away per car. Again, that bag giveaway will happen on Museum of the Grand Prairie front porch Tuesday, March 16th, starting at 1 o'clock and going till 3 p.m. or while supplies last if we run out before 3 o'clock. One last thing, the next event in our annual garden speaker series is coming up on Thursday, March 18th at 7 o'clock, again, live right here on our Facebook and YouTube pages, where Champaign County Master Gardener Jill Taylor will present a program titled How to Plant a Garden for Pollinators. Another great spring theme here with the spring theme program, seeing those caterpillars, butterflies, bees, all other sorts of pollinators. If you want to attract those to your own yard, tune in for that program. To learn more about us at the Museum of the Grand Prairie and throughout Champaign County Forest Preserve District, be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, or check out museumofthegrandprairie.org or ccfpd.org. Again, let us know where you're watching from this morning. Write that down below. Got some other folks letting us know where they're watching from. Kathleen is watching from Canton, and Dolly is watching from Sioux Falls. So thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Okay, without further ado, let's jump into today's program. Again, the theme for today is Springtime Tales. And with the recent spring-like weather we've been having here in Central Illinois, it's been absolutely gorgeous for the past 4 or 5 days. Today it's going to be a little windy. maybe a little more gloomy than our last few days, but still we can feel spring coming. It is coming, or it's already here. Maybe it's here to stay, hopefully. So I know Barb and Sandy have some awesome springtime tales and some great content to share with you. So without further ado, let's get started. Sandy, why don't you go ahead and go first and share what you want to share with us today?
Thanks, Pat. Hi, I'm going to share some of our museum artifacts and objects with you. Have any of you maybe have a pair of wool gloves at home that you wear in the winter, or a wool coat? And we wear wool really only in the winter here, but in the 1800s, many local settlers around here wore wool clothing all year long, even in the summer when it was 90-some degrees out in the fields. But springtime was a very important time of year for step number 2 when it came to be making wool clothing. And step number 1 you had been doing all year long, which was to raise those sheep. And by the time we get to spring, if you've done a good job raising your sheep, you can barely tell what kind of animal is in there. So job number 2 is going to happen in the springtime. As we know, a lot of animals that are furry shed a lot of their hair in the springtime so that they're not too hot in the summer, and then it has a chance to grow back in the fall and be nice and warm in the winter. So the sheep are sheared in the springtime. This is a pair of shears from a while ago. It was a one-person job. It still is today, but most of them are electric shears today. And here is a picture of a shearer shearing a sheep. Now, by the time the sheep are all sheared, you can barely tell that it was the same animal. And he's all nice and cool for the summer. Now that leaves your lawn with lots of wool sitting on it. And of course, it's kind of dirty because the sheep are outside animals. So I have tons of dirty wool. The next step I need to do is to wash the wool. Now I want to use warm water, but not hot water, because I want the lanolin to be able to stay on my wool. So I've washed this wool, very fluffy. Still has that nice wool smell to it. But you can see there's a lot of little rats in there and things that are not going to work very well for when I eventually spin the wool. So the next job after I have nice clean wool is to card the wool. These are wool cards with lots of spikes on them. So I take a small piece of my wool, like so, and I put it on one of the cards. I turn the other one upside down over top, and I'm going to pull. So I pull, pull, and after a minute or so of doing this, it's kind of tiring work. I cannot imagine doing this for hours and hours and hours and days and days. Eventually, the wool is all gone down into those spikes. How do I get it off? I turn them this way so the handles are going together. I carefully go back and forth, which is hard work in itself. And like magic, voila, there comes my nice carded wool. So now I have this wool, and I'm ready to go the next step, which is to spin the wool. Now, luckily, you don't have to do all this by hand. There are a couple different kinds of machines. One of them that lots of us have heard of is a spinning wool. I really like this book. It's a nice picture book. I'm going to read what's on this page. It says, if butterflies had wings of wood as thin as paper and flew in perfect circles, this would be the sound of a spinning wheel. And she's spinning, she's enjoying her spinning. Another kind you could use is called a drop spindle. This is actually a hand spinner. And so when I want to do this, if I was a mother, I could still be tending the fire while I did this. I could be tending my children perhaps too. Eventually, I end up with skeins of lovely yarn. Now, depending what breed of sheep you own, you may have different colors of wool. So you might have some skeins of black, brown, white, different shades in between there. Now, coloring it into blue or green is not necessary for making clothing, but some people like to do that. So the next step, if you wish to do that, is to dye your yarn. And dye was all natural, made from plants. I'm going to put this closer so you can see it well. And so different kinds of plants would give different colors of dye. Here we have brown onion skin, gives us this goldish color. Indian paintbrush, a brown color. And through the spring, summer, and fall, you would harvest the flowers and parts of the leaves, the stems that you would use for your dye, make all your dye, and then color whatever part of that wool you wanted to use. Then after you're done with spinning the wool and dyeing the wool, then you are ready to weave the wool. And this is a loom that weaves it into wool fabric. You could also use a hand loom if you weren't doing a very large one. This is similar to making placemats out of construction paper, where you would go over and under, over and under, over and under with your shuttle, and you have it laced one direction, and then you weave the second direction. Now, if you're only going to make a square of material like this, say for a small blanket or whatever, then you're just about done with it. But if you're going to make, let's say, a new dress or a new jacket or a pair of pants, then you have to sew that fabric that you wove into the clothing that you want. Sewing machines were not invented until the 1850s. So a lot of people used sewing needles. And here is a packet of steel sewing needles. And you can see in the center, there's even a threader that could help get that wool yarn through those tiny eyes of the needles. So that's a lot of steps. Let's review the steps that it takes for going from the sheet to the clothing. First, we have to raise the sheet, then we shear the sheet, wash the dirty wool, card the wool, spin the wool, weave the wool, and sew the wool. And if we want to add that step of dyeing in there, then we have an 8th step to have all your clothing. And today, most of us go to the store. Even simpler yet, we sit at home and order things online. And we very rarely think of all the people and all the work that has gone into making our everyday clothing. So take a little bit of time to be very grateful for all the things that we have that we don't have to do very much work for at all. And I hope you appreciate your new perspective on spring. And when you're out there walking in the beautiful gardens here at the Forest Preserve or around your house or other places, take a look at some of those flowers and think about what color of dye might that make, because they don't always make dye of the color that it looks like they might make. So thanks for joining me today. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to do our best to answer them.
That's great, Sandy. It's yeah, that's quite a process to go from, as you said, shearing the sheep all the way to the final product there. A lot of hard work involved. Katie's tuning in and she said, I bet they had a good arm. I bet they had good arm and shoulder muscles from carding that wool.
That's probably true.
Most
Once in
definitely.
a while when I do that with a field trip, the kids only do it for a minute or two, but I make them do it till half of them at least are complaining about how tired they're getting. And one mom I actually had say, can I buy a pair of those for Christmas present for my son? I thought it was kind of funny. So yeah, our children are not used to working hard at all anymore.
Yeah. Gabrielle has a question, which I think you kind of addressed a little bit, but if you wouldn't mind going over it again, did they use flowers to dye the wool?
They use different parts of the plants. I have actually never made dye from a plant, but on here we have red onion skin, juniper root, sage, hyacinth, tea, wild walnut shell, juniper berries, cliff rose, red juniper root, brown onion skin, Indian paintbrush, goldenrod, and then back to there. Barb, have you ever made dye?
Yeah, they do. Sometimes the flowers are used, but they don't, as you said, Sandy, they don't turn out the same color as you think they're going to. Often it's other parts of the plant roots sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And then they even used beetles to like ladybug kind of beetles to dye things too. So there's all kinds of things they use to dye.
Yeah, great. Katie also wanted to mention one of the items in the upcoming free spring break craft bag at the museum this Tuesday is a free cardboard loom along with some yarn to give weaving a try. So if you're wanting to give weaving a try to see if you can pick up one of those free craft bags on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sandy. That was great. Really, really great job. And thank you for sharing all that information with us. Barb, how about you? You want to take it away here?
Sure. I should put up one of my
Sure.
one of my pictures so that they don't actually have to just stare at me. Oh no, they're staring at me. There you go. Uh-oh. So thanks, Pat. So when Pat asked us to do something about winter tales, or spring tales, winter tales, I got to get that out of my head. I thought of flowers because usually around the 15th of March, I buy my first pansies because I'm a flower nut. And my grandmother's birthday was the 15th of March. And usually it's safe by the second or third week of March to have pansies around here because they're pretty winter hardy. And so it doesn't usually get below about 25 after the middle of March. So you can have them. And that led me to think, okay, what flowers do we have in the collection? Which led me down another path altogether because it was very common in the 19th century to use flowers as symbols. It's actually been common throughout human history. If you think about Shakespeare, there's a line in Hamlet where Ophelia is kind of going crazy, and she says, "Rosemary, that's for remembrance. Pray you love remember, and pansies, that's for thoughts." So I mean, it goes back quite a ways, but in the 19th century, it became a real craze, and there were hundreds of books published on the language of flowers, and this is just one of them. Kate Greenaway's is very, very commonly known. what each flower was assigned a symbol. Pat, could you turn to the next one? So oftentimes the flowers were actually published on postcards, and then you would send this postcard and you would say, thinking of you, because there's yellow pansies on there. I don't know if you can see it, but wild roses are for pleasure and pain. Yellow marguerites, which is another name for daisies, is I come soon. Canterbury bells is your letter was received. So, and this wasn't just this postcard. There were many postcards. Pat, could you do the next one? Here's another one. The Packard Piano Company put this out. So it was so common that it was even used in advertising. And of course, roses are for love, but violets are for faithfulness, which I really thought was sweet. And Lily of the Valley was return of happiness. Of course, lilies of the valley are pretty early spring, not really early, but pretty early. So mid-April to early May. So, of course, return of happiness means return of spring. There's a springtime tale for you. The next one. This is a bookmark that's in our collection. And remember I said Shakespeare said pansies were for thoughts. So this is a bookmark that's actually also a card. It opens up so that you can write inside, I'm thinking of you. But, and it uses the very old symbol of pansies as I'm thinking of you. And of course, pansies, I love pansies. It's 15th of March, pansies. Okay, go ahead. Pat, could you show the next one? This is a fun one. This is a certificate for not being late or absent from school for the 1921 to 1923 school years for Ruth Cheesebro. The Cheesebros were the family that donated our blacksmith shop. But Ruth apparently never missed school and never was late. And so she got an award for it. I actually have one for second grade because I didn't miss school in second grade. But I loved this because it has the violets, which we just saw were signs of faithfulness, right? And oaks are, of course, those are oak leaves on the right side. So they use the symbolism of leaves as well. And what better way to express the faithfulness and also the strength of a kid who never missed school. Okay, show me the last one. Now this one is very odd. But it's also a springtime thing. These are either apple or cherry blossoms on a powder horn of all things. Now, powder horns were used when powder was used in guns, so up through about the middle of the 19th century. And they were used to carry your gunpowder around with you. And why would somebody paint a flower on a powder horn? I don't know. Now, the symbolism of apple or cherry blossoms is two different things. I think they're both interesting. One of them, it's often listed as deceit. And I kind of get that because if an apple is blossoming and I don't know if you've seen an apple tree that's blossomed and is beautiful in the spring. And then all those blossoms fall off and it just gets green, but the little center part of the blossom turns into the apple, right? So it's kind of deceitful. You get a pretty flowery tree and eventually you get a fruit out of it. So deceit might be the meaning, but the other possible meaning is abundance. And I think if I were carrying around a powder horn and I was out looking for food, I would want to have an abundant hunt. So I think that's probably what that means. But if you're interested in more about the language of flowers, all you have to do is Google Floriology. It's FLORIOLOGY, and you will find more than you would ever want to know, because people still like to send messages with flowers. And you may have gotten yellow roses and know what that means. So that's it, Pat. That's what I got. Be happy to answer any questions, though. Come on.
There we go. Here. Oh, that's great, Barb. Yeah, it's. I didn't know that there was a whole study of
It's
the
great.
language of flowers, floriology. Might have to dive deep into that. That's really interesting. Barb, I'm sorry. Gabrielle says, how are the plants used to make dye? Going back, Sandy, to your question, or to your topic, do you know how the plants are used to make the dye?
I don't. Do you, Barb?
Usually it requires boiling the things for a long, and putting the wool into the boiling pot of whatever it is, and doing it for a very long time. So yes, they're crushed, but you don't just crush them and stick them on the wool. You brew up a pot of dye, and then you submerge the yarn into it, or the wool into it.
Gabrielle also had a question about the powder horn. Do you know what it's made from? Is it wood?
Yeah, those are usually made from cow horn. I think that's, in the United States, that's usually what they're made from. They're not made from any, they're domesticated. They are made from domesticated cows. They're not made from any endangered animals. We have several in our collection because the guy that gave our founding collection collected them. They're a little bit earlier than most people around here would have used, but those people that Sandy was talking about, the people who were here before the 1850s, before the industrialized era, would have had powder horns.
Cool. Well, that was great, Barb, Sandy. I mean, all this talk about flowers and springtime makes me want it more and more. I know we're expecting rain for quite the next few days, but spring and summer even will be here sooner than we realize. So, but that's all our time today. If you have any further questions, feel free to write those down in the comments, and we can answer those after this live program is over. Again, check us out with some of our upcoming events, live streamed or craft bag giveaways, or follow us on social media to learn more all about us. Come and see us. We're now open at the Museum of the Grand Prairie and the Homer Lake Interpretive Center. And our next Mornings with the Museum program will happen in April, on Wednesday, April 14th. Again, live on our Facebook and YouTube pages at 10 a.m., where the theme is Natural Wonders, where we will have a whole bunch of wonderful things shared for you. So thank you so much for tuning in. Susan, just wanted to share this with Barb and Sandy. She says, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Gabrielle says, thanks. I have some squirmy homeschool kids that really enjoyed having their questions answered live. So that's great.
Thanks.
Yeah. So thank you so much for tuning in wherever you're watching from today. And we hope to see you at our next program. Thank you.
Bye. Buy yourself some pansies. We're thinking of you.